Hello, everyone. Welcome. I would like to thank you all for joining this session. My name is Yizhou Fan. I'm now working as a postdoc researcher in the University of Edinburgh. So this study is a collaboration with John, Shavin, Jelena, and Dragon. So in the beginning, I would like to provide a very quick and short introduction about the key topic of this study, which is learning tactics. And we consider learning tactics as learners' cognitive routines used for performing specific learning tasks. For example, if a learner log into an e-learning platform and for like half an hour or 1 hour, then this learner might read something first, then go to the quiz to use the quiz to evaluate their reading, right? This can be a tactic, but in other way, they can do the quiz first, then go to read something or search for something specifically. This can be another tactic. This is what we mean by learning tactics. Another relevant concept is learning strategy. We believe learning strategies at a little bit higher level reflect the specific way a learner selects, uses, and combines learning tactics to achieve a learning goal. Usually in a longer time slot, like in a course or in a week, right? So before, we have lots of studies already reported on different novel approaches to detect learning tactics and strategies, especially from trace data collected from e-learning platforms. And they also explain and interpret different tactics based on learning behaviors. For example, this is a content-oriented tactic, or that's an assessment-oriented tactic, something like this. But however, we believe there is still a need to deepen our understanding for the identified tactics and strategies, especially to understand the underlying and self-regulating learning processes that get activated during different tactics. In order to achieve this, we choose course, which is a Python course, and more than 700 learners participated in this course. This course followed a flipped classroom design. So before class, learners need to read a lot. They need to do, in average, 16 pages of pre-class reading, and also finish some pre-class quizzes and like assignments. In class, they will do a 3-hour face-to-face practical session every week. In this study, we focused on the online part, and we collected data from three sources. First of all is a Moodle. As a learning management system, learners can read the instruction, announcement, and interact with their peers and finish quizzes, watch some videos in the Moodle. But before class, the main task is to do reading. So we combine an e-textbook platform called Alexandra, and we also embedded a learning tool, which is an annotation tool called Hypothesize. Using these two, learners can make annotations. For example, they can make comment about something, or they can take notes, or they can highlight something as important, as confusing, or they can highlight something to ask questions to the teachers. So once we collect the data and we synchronized all the raw data, then we built an action library to label all the raw data into certain learning actions. For example, reading, annotation, quiz, or task overview, something like this. And we also segmented all the learning into sessions. We used 45 minutes as a cut. If one learning action is longer than 45 minutes, which shouldn't be in the natural learning process, that's a signal that we consider this section was terminated. So after that, we used clustering method to cluster all the sessions into different clusters. Then we interpreted clusters into tactics. So till now, this is what usually has been done in many studies. But in our study, we did one step further. We create a process library to interpret actions and action sequences or patterns, or action patterns, into specific micro-level SR processes. For example, we interpret some action sequences into evaluation, or working on task, or task analyze. Then in this way, we can translate all the actions into SRL processes and use process mining, like John said, shared yesterday some algorithm, for example, P-miner, to model the SR process models. For example, here is one can be considered a SR process model for tactic 1, and we can generate the process model for all the tactics. So first of all, I would like to introduce a little bit more for the action library. Here we define 7 actions like reading, annotation, videos, quiz, assignment, forum, and informing. Reading, for example, we have first reading, rereading, review reading, something like this. And annotation, they can annotation comment or annotation confusing or annotation deleted. And the informing means when learners go to the home page and view the whole list of the tasks, that's homepage views. And also in Moodle, once they finish the quiz or a video, they can mark it as done. So if learners mark something as completed, this is also what we mean by informing. And then we can then we use the first order Markov model to generate the transition matrix of all the 7 actions and use the transition matrix as input to cluster all the sessions into tactics. So here we obtained 4 learning tactics in our study. First one, we named it as reading with quiz tactic. As you can see, the green part, which is reading, is quite dominant in this tactic. And the lower half is the temporal distribution. So as this is the first step and the second, and then 15 steps of actions of the session. So from the beginning to the end. So as you can see, learners who use this the first tactic tend to do reading right in the beginning, like the first action or second action. They are like 80 or 70% of all the actions are reading. Then generally they are moving from reading to quiz, which is red here. So this is the first tactic that we named the reading with quiz tactic, and it counted 23% of all the sessions. The second one we named as assessment and interaction tactic. The third one we named as short logging and interact tactic, and the last one we named focus on quiz tactic, which is pretty clear that the quiz is very dominant and learners are not doing any reading and all other actions here. The next step is we build a process library as shown here. So we define 3 macro level SR processes, which are planning, engagement, and evaluation. Under each macro level SR processes, we define the micro level SR processes. For example, on the planning, as shown in the screenshot, includes task analyze and goal setting. So under each micro-level SR processes, we listed different action sequences or action patterns. And for example, here is a pattern, reading to annotation confusing. So this is a typical pattern we interpret as learners are trying to use this annotation to identify a learning goal. That's why it is listed here, like on the goal setting, to identify learning gap. So once we have the actions, we can generate a process model of actions, for example, for the first tactic. And so that the node is action and the edges are the transitions and the numbers are the transition probabilities. As you can see, learners start with reading, then go to informing, then go back and forth with quiz or forum or assignment, other actions. But once we have the process library, we can move one step forward and translate the model of actions to the model of SRL processes that we use this our process library to generate this. So in the view of SRL theory, learners started their learning with direct engagement. WOT is working on task. So some learners, a small percent of the learners showed the planning process. Planning.ta is planning, task analyze, or planning goal setting before engagement. And what is very important in this process map is there's an evaluation process in between different engagement processes. As you can see, learners engaged in some engagement process and then go back and forth with evaluation processes. So this one step further, moving from an action model to SR process model, enables us to deepen our understanding of tactics. We can also compare different SR process models between tactics. For example, here, if we compare the first tactic, which is reading with quiz tactic, and assessment and interaction tactic, the red edges indicating these transitions are higher, with higher transition probabilities in the first tactic, and the green and the green edges indicate higher transition probabilities in the second tactic. And so you can see learners who use the first tactic tend to go or always go back to this engagement or working on task process. But learners who use the second tactic, they tended to always go back to this evaluation process. You can see lots of green edges pointing to this process. And also learners who used the first tactic, they tend to start with engagement directly, but learners who use the second tactic, they tend to do the planning, task analyze in the very beginning of the session. So by this way, before we can only compare tactics at the action level. Now we can move and compare tactics from the macro level as our processes. Okay, so I would like to provide a quick summary about the study from the methodology point of view. The approach we proposed in this study allows us to take one step forward in the analysis of learning tactics, especially moving from actions to SR processes. And why we want to do this is because most of these tactic studies before follow the same approach, but the problem is we all stopped at the action level and we can't talk to each other. For example, here I listed 4 studies which were done by my colleagues here in Edinburgh, and they detect some very similar tactics, for example, content access tactic or diverse assessment-oriented tactic or video-oriented tactic, or in one of my paper, content-oriented tactics. But even though these tactics are similar, they were named similar, but we can't really say that's the same tactic or that's not the same tactic, because we always have different actions in different contexts, right? In our case, in the study I just presented, reading is a very important task. So learners engage a lot in the reading. But in a MOOC, for example, in another context, in a MOOC context, the videos can be very dominant. That's why we need to take one step further to the SR processes, because once we moved one step forward and we can talk to each other at the theoretical level, right? As long as we use the same framework of process library. So that's the contribution of this study. We believe it enabled the researchers now can start accumulating a larger body of knowledge about learning mechanisms, of learning tactics and strategies. So I would also like to point out some limitations and future directions. For now, we are using the simple navigation log collected in Moodle and the e-textbook. So we believe this kind of limited us. If later on we are able to collect more data channels, for example, keyboard stroke, even eye track data, then we can interpret and synchronize all the data into more a richer multi-channel learning data set, and label actions there and detect more meaningful SR processes there. And another future directions, as one of my colleagues just gave a presentation about learning tools. More useful learning tools will definitely benefit the learning and also benefit the management of SR processes. For example, here we only have an annotation tool, right? But if we can include more tools such as planner, search, timer, then we will definitely improve our measurement. Yeah, okay, that's my presentation. And thank you all for listening, and I'm happy to take more questions.